All right, so picture this. The Civil War is over, and 4 million people who were once enslaved are now legally free. But what does freedom actually mean when you have absolutely nothing to your name except the clothes on your back? Today, we're going to dig into the system that grew out of the ashes of slavery, a system that was sold as a path to independence, but for so many, it was just another form of bondage.
And this, right here, gets to the absolute heart of the matter. You know, the 13th Amendment officially ended the legal ownership of another person, but you can't just flip a switch and dismantle centuries of power dynamics. To keep the old social order in place, something new was needed, something that looked a whole lot like an opportunity.
So let's just set the scene for a second. It's 1865. The Confederacy is lost, the South is economically shattered, and its entire social structure, which was built on the backs of enslaved people, has just been completely upended. This created a huge problem for everybody involved. What you're seeing here is a total economic deadlock. On one side, you've got these landowners with tons of property, but literally no cash to pay anyone to work it. And on the other side, you have millions of newly freed African Americans who have their freedom, sure, but no land, no money, and zero chance of getting a loan. It was a crisis just waiting for a so-called solution. And that solution was sharecropping. Now, on the surface, it probably seemed like a pretty reasonable idea, right? A way to get the farms running again and maybe, just maybe, offer a path forward for the formerly enslaved. But you see that question mark there in the subtitle? Yeah, that's there for a very good reason.
So here's the textbook definition. It sounds pretty straightforward, like a simple business deal, doesn't it? The landowner puts up the capital, the land, and the tenant, or sharecropper, provides the labor. In theory, they split the profits. It almost sounds like a modern-day partnership.
And this is what that promise looked like on paper. Try to put yourself in their shoes. You're a freed person in 1866. This deal offers you a place to live, tools to work with, and the chance to farm for yourself, to kind of be your own boss. The dream wasn't just about surviving, it was about saving enough money to one day buy your own piece of land. The American dream, Southern style.
But for the vast majority of people, that dream was never going to happen. It was always going to be just a dream. Because that promise, it was a carefully constructed illusion. This system wasn't designed for opportunity. It was designed for control.
Exactly. What was the catch? How did a system that looked so fair, so balanced on paper, become this brutal tool of oppression that would hang around for nearly a century? Well, the answer wasn't out in the cotton fields, it was hidden in the account books. And this lays out the whole vicious cycle. It all started at the landowner's store, which was of course the only place sharecroppers could get supplies. They had to buy everything on credit, and the prices were jacked way up. Then, after a full year of backbreaking work, came settlement day. The landowner would pull out his ledger and deduct all those costs from the worker's share of the crop. The math was always fuzzy, and the result was almost always the same. Just let that sink in for a minute. You work an entire year, you grow a successful crop, and when it's all said and done, you're told you didn't make a single penny. In fact, you're now even deeper in debt to the man. This wasn't a mistake or a bad year. This was how the system was designed to work. And here's the absolute kicker. This wasn't just a bad deal you could walk away from. The debt was legally binding. If you owed the landowner money, state laws literally made it illegal for you to leave his land. You were forced to stay and work another year to pay it off, a debt that, by design, was only ever going to get bigger. The trap was sprung.
And that is why historians often call sharecropping a form of neo-slavery. It achieved the very same end result, a controllable, cheap labor force that couldn't leave. But it swapped the physical chains of slavery for the invisible but legally enforced chains of debt.
I mean, when you put it side by side like this, the parallels are just chilling. The mechanism of control shifts from owning a person to owning their debt. The method shifts from whips and chains to crooked contracts and poverty. And the result? You go from having no freedom to having the cruel illusion of freedom. Now, the sharecropping system didn't just exist in a vacuum. It was propped up by a whole legal framework known as the Black Codes. These were laws designed to control every aspect of Black life. They made it a crime to be unemployed, or even to just move around without proof you had a job. So if you tried to escape a terrible sharecropping contract, you could be arrested for vagrancy and forced right back into another one. The law was a willing partner in this whole scheme.
It is so important to understand that this wasn't just some brief, messy period right after the Civil War. Sharecropping cast a long, dark shadow over the South, and really the whole country, for for generations.
Just look at this timeline. It shows you the incredible staying power of this system. It really takes hold in the 1870s, and it doesn't truly fade away until the civil rights movement in the 1960s. That's almost a full century. We're talking about the grandparents and great-grandparents of people alive today who were caught in this cycle. This is not ancient history. Its effects are still with us. And the consequences, they were profound. The system basically locked the entire South into poverty for decades. But the most devastating impact was that it systematically blocked generations of African-American families from building any kind of wealth. I mean, if you can't save money, you can't buy land, you can't start a business, and you certainly can't pass anything down to your kids. This is a huge reason for the racial wealth gap that we still see today.
When you really boil it all down, sharecropping was a masterpiece of social control that was disguised as an economic system. It kept the old racial hierarchy perfectly in place, all under the false promise of free labor, and ensured that for millions of people, true freedom would remain a dream that was always just out of reach.
So we're left with this really fundamental question. The story of sharecropping forces us all to think about what freedom really is. Is it just about not being legally owned by someone else? Or does real, true liberty have to include economic opportunity, the ability to earn a fair living, and the power to actually shape your own destiny?